In this video lesson, we are going to discuss the concept of cyber etiquette. First of all, let's take a look at what cyber etiquette is. Etiquette, by its definition, is the customary code of polite behavior in society among members of a particular profession or group. In regards to cyber etiquette, the particular group would be all of those people who are participating in activities on the internet, such as using email or discussion boards or chat. And we are going to look at, in regards to etiquette, how to be polite when using these forms of communication, which is extremely important as you become an online learner. First of all, let's start by taking a look at email. Some email rules to live by. First of all, when replying to an email, remember that there are two different options, reply and reply all. If you just want to reply to the person who sent you the email, you want to choose reply. If you want to reply to everyone that the person who sent the email sent the original one to, then you do a reply all. Be careful that you do not accidentally click on reply all if you only want to respond to the sender. There are times when you don't want everyone who has been sent the original message to hear your response, and so you really need to be careful not to accidentally click reply all. When sending an email, please remember to include a clear subject line. It's a good idea if you are talking about an assignment question that you have. You label your subject, the question about, and then the name of the assignment. Also a good idea in the first time that you send an email to include your first name or your last name in that email subject line, especially your last name, because that way if it should end up in the person's spam folder who you're trying to send it to, they'd be able to find that pretty easily. But whatever you do, do not leave your subject line blank, and don't put gibberish or garbage in your subject line. Oftentimes it would just then end up in a person's junk mail. So always include a clear subject line. Really simple to do, but important. Make sure when you're sending an email, you use good punctuation, spelling, and grammar. Yes, email is often considered a faster form of communication than writing a letter or writing something down by hand, but it's important as a student that you're still following rules of punctuation, spelling, and grammar. Even though it is an online form of communication, it's still a form of communication that you're using in an educational setting. And so it's really important that you do remember to check these things. Make sure that you use acronyms sparingly. When you're emailing for a class, you really don't want to use a whole lot of IDKs or LOLs. Yes, your teacher probably does know what most of them means, but it's really not a good way of presenting yourself as a student. So save those for your text messages to your friends, emails to your friends. There it's fine. But really important when you're emailing within a course setting that you are presenting yourself as a student. And as a student, you really don't want to use acronyms like this. Please remember when you're emailing, do not write in all caps. When you write in all caps, it's like you're yelling at the person. And no person who's reading your email wants to read something that is presented like you're being yelled at. So please don't write in all caps. You would not stand in front of your teacher and yell at them your question or your response. So in an email, you don't write in all caps to your person. Be careful when you're including humor in your emails. Sometimes students try to send an email and they include something that they think is funny. Perhaps if they had said it in a face-to-face setting where the teacher could see the facial expression and hear the voice, they would understand that it was humor, but it doesn't always come across in email. It can be really misunderstood, and you certainly don't want something that you mean as a joke to be taken seriously and have it be offensive to your teacher. So just be really careful when including humor. Make sure that it's really clear that it is humor. If you're ever in doubt, just don't include it. Please remember to reread your email before sending it. Number one, you want to make sure that it makes sense. And number two, you want to make sure that it has the right tone to it. Remember that email communication is the way that you're staying in contact with your teacher, with perhaps your classmates. And all they get are the words on the page. So while you might have said it in a tone that's not harsh, your email may come across as harsh. So really read it carefully and make sure that you're not, even by accident, offending someone with how you're presenting yourself in email. And that's really important. I know that I've gotten emails from students in the past where I certainly don't think the student meant to be rude, but the way they presented their email, the way they said what they had to say really did not come across in the best light. So please make sure you reread your email before sending it, just to make sure that it really comes across the way you mean it to come across. And if you're in doubt, please either revise it or do not send it. Also, a good idea if you're sending an email in response to something that has you upset, really take some time, reread it a few times, wait before you send a response, because sometimes what you might say in the heat of being upset, if you had time to cool down, it would come across much better. And when a person sends you an email, please respond to that person's email. That way they know that you've received it. Just a matter of common courtesy there. Discussion board rules to live by, very similar to email in many aspects. Some things you want to make sure that you do in a discussion board is introduce yourself briefly. We don't need your whole life history, but it's good in your first post to let us know at least who you are, a little bit about yourself. Make sure that you read prior messages. Really important so that, number one, you're not just repeating what everyone else said, and number two, perhaps you'll have something to add to those prior messages. Just like an email, you want to make sure that you title your messages in a discussion board. It helps other people who are reading the discussion board find the threads or the pieces of messages that they really want to read and follow up on themselves. So make sure you title your message. It also helps it stand out from everyone else's. If everyone didn't title their message, we would just have a long list of people's names and we would have no clue what they were writing about. Make sure that you stay relevant. It means to stay on topic. If you're discussing a current event on a discussion board, don't start talking about what your plans are for the weekend. Stay on topic, stay relevant, make sure that everything that you write is in direct response to what the discussion board is actually about. Don't be afraid to ask questions. A discussion board is a chance for others to answer your questions, or you to answer the questions of others. It's a dialogue, a conversation, a discussion. So please don't be afraid to ask questions in a discussion board. Again, when you're typing, be sure that you're clear. Reread things so that you know that you're making sense. Remember, the only thing that the person has on the other side of the screen is what you have typed. And so if they don't understand it, if it's not clear, you're not going to be able to get your point across as you want to. And as always, make sure you check spelling, punctuation, grammar. You really want to present yourself in the best light possible. Some things you should not do on a discussion board. Don't share your user ID or password. We're going to talk more about this when we talk about internet privacy, but really important that you never share your user ID or password with anyone. Don't ever give personal information on a discussion board. It's dangerous to give too much personal information about yourself, and it's also not really necessary, especially in an online class. Your discussion boards are going to be very focused, so we don't need a whole lot of personal information about you. Again, don't use all caps, it's yelling, and you don't need to yell at everyone who reads your discussion board post. Do not flame others. Flaming on the internet is when you are harsh or mean to someone. So perhaps somebody's written a discussion board post and you really disagree with it. You do not want to call them out and be nasty to them. Number one, it's a form of bullying. And number two, it's just inappropriate. In a classroom, in a traditional setting, you certainly would not sit there and badmouth somebody nastily in front of your class, or I hope you wouldn't. The same thing with an online class. That's there for everyone to read, and you certainly do not want to harshly criticize someone for what they've said. There's no need to be too short. There's nothing more annoying on a discussion board than somebody's post of 2 words. Me too. Or I agree. Please make sure that your discussion boards are substantial and that they actually have something to say. Otherwise, there's no point in posting if you don't really have anything to say. And please, when reading posts, don't be easily offended or jump to conclusions. Remember, some people, when they type things, maybe it just didn't come out how they really meant it. So don't immediately believe that somebody is bashing you or bashing your idea or criticizing you. Please read it carefully. If you're questioning it or you're wondering it, respond in a polite manner, just stating, I'm not really sure what you meant here, or could you explain this further? But don't ever be easily offended, jump to conclusions, because that's really how people misunderstand each other. So finally, why does all of this matter? Well, in an online class, your classmates and your teacher get to know you by your communication. So everyone learns who you are based on what you type. And if you're presenting yourself in email and discussion boards as rude or nasty, or if you're not proofreading and spelling carefully, and so we're having trouble understanding you, that all comes across and we might miss some of the good qualities because that's all we're getting. So really important, with this being the primary means of getting to know you as a person, that you present yourself in the best light possible. So things like proofreading, spelling, grammar show that you take pride in your work. Show that you're taking your time with your assignments. Thoughtful responses to classmates' discussion board posts. Show that you are caring about your class. Show that you have something intelligent to say. And all of those are good things that we want to see. And sometimes students don't think necessarily before they send an email, and the teacher's given an impression of them that really isn't the case, which is why I really want to emphasize how important it is to make sure you reread your emails. Make sure that they are indeed coming across the way you intend them to be. Okay? As always, if you have questions about any of these concepts that we cover in this course, please do not hesitate to contact your instructor. He or she would be more than willing to sit down and talk to you about these ideas.